Yo, this is the Ancient Texan. Uh, I wanted, I found out a new word, supply chain stack. And I've previously talked about a supply chain, kind of the basic concept. And you can see this picture here, supply chain basics. It shows that everything comes from the earth through mining, or it comes through the from the earth, like from oil uh, oil drilling, or it comes from farming, but it all comes from the earth originally. And from mining, we get different minerals and metals and chemicals. And then we manufacture those into parts. And those parts we put together to make cars and other consumer goods. And this is generic, but I think it doesn't quite capture the complexity of the situation. So I said, let's imagine we're going to build an AI center, a data center. What is what is that going to look like? And I was myself surprised at the complexity of an AI center. Not that I know anything about making an AI center, but I know about some of the components and raw materials that you need to make an AI center. So at the center of this diagram, you'll see a data center, and we're calling this whole configuration um, a supply chain stack for AI. And it shows all the materials that have to go into a data center. For instance, you need an iron ore mine to make you a iron ore concentrate that goes into a steel plant. Um, I should have put in there. You also need carbon, so you need a carbon mine or a graphite mine or a coal mine or I'll add that to the thing. But you need a lot of elements just to make the steel that you know builds. You build a building, a plant that has steel in it, and there's a whole collection of mines that have to make raw materials to go into those steel, chrome being one of the big ones, to build your data center. A lot of that data center probably has a lot of aluminum parts. I don't know that for a fact, but I would just assume they'd be lightweighting some of the stuff that goes into the plant. You need fiber optic cables, you need rare earths, you need silica, um, you need anything that's in red, like down here in the bottom bauxite mine. That means that's it comes out of the ground, that orange circle. Um, but once it comes out of the ground, you need a plant to make it into something, like to make it into alumina, that then makes it into aluminum metal. Those are all separate plants. Um, you need rare earths, rare earth refining, which is really complicated. This would be many plants or many divisions inside of a building, process areas. You got to make the fiber optic cables, which is another plant. Um, and then the fiber optics go into the data grid um, and go to the data center. And the data center, when it's operating, will have customers that use the data grid to get out. But then you also have a power grid that's got to furnace this data center. You can have renewables. You can have nuclear power plants. You can have fracking to make gas to go into the power plant, and the power plant has to deliver the power through a power grid, and the power grid needs copper, but my lines are getting really kind of all messed up together. So I'm still struggling with how to make this picture to capture a very complicated. Um, it's not complicated. It's detailed um, and tedious to try to draw this, and I'm trying to get a whole lot of things together in one place. And what I want to show is that on most of these things, if you don't have them, there might be some exceptions to what I'm going to say. Like, for instance, if you don't have aluminum, you can probably use steel. But if you don't have steel, probably couldn't use aluminum. Don't have copper, not much else you can use. You can send electricity over aluminum cables. And they've even tried using aluminum inside homes, and it takes special connectors, and people don't do that, and they use the connectors they use for copper and burn down their house. Minor details. Copper is really hard to do without. I'm not sure from a practical viewpoint you could take copper out of this. You have the copper mine, then you have smelters that make the copper metal, and they also make, you get a lot of precious metals during the processing of the copper. You also recover precious metals and silver. And then the copper smelter sends the copper to a copper wire and cable mill, which that's a whole big complicated process in its own right. And we're actually doing pretty good on that in the U.S. And then that, copper goes, connects the data center both from power, and it used to connect it on the data grid, but that's pretty much gone now, fiber optics. But the power grid, you obviously need a line from copper over here to the power grid and bringing power into the whole center. Maybe I'll move copper to this corner of the drawing. You have to have power plants, obviously, and I'm just showing a few of them. You can have renewables. You can have nuclear power plants. You can have power plants running on natural gas. All these things require water. I mean, water would go all over the place, but it's you need a lot of water for cooling the data centers. And you'd have waste products coming out of all this, which would be another whole complicated drawing showing everything going back to the earth. But all these red squares, for instance, if you want to have a nuclear power plant, you have to have uranium. Or nowadays, if you're advanced society like China, or they're building one of these in Denmark, you would have a thorium power plant, which I'd love to work on that. That'd be a lot of fun. But not here in the U.S. anyway. We don't do that. We're not advanced enough. But you have to have uranium refining. Again, that's China, Russia. Uranium and thorium mines, mostly Russia. Rare earth mines, all over the world, but controlled by China. Rare earth refining, controlled by China. Bauxite mines, I think that's controlled by a lot of people, not us, but by a lot of people other than just China. Iron ore mines, we got a little bit going on in the U.S., but a lot of we just get steel from China instead of making our own stuff. Chrome mines, I don't think we have any. Pardon me, I got a cold fighting it here. Um, Steel needs manganese, carbon, nickel, moly. Don't have any of those in the U.S. that I know of. Copper mines, we have a few. If we could get a permit, we could have a lot more. A lot of the precious metals come from mining other non-ferrous metals. Uh, we have a little bit. Software, we do that ourselves. Silica mines, we have that. To make concrete, you need calcium aggregates, silica. Anyway, I want to show here is that if someone else controls these things in the outer circle, you can't send them. If they cut us off from these materials, you can't make steel, for instance. Now, there used to be the idea that we had friends in the world before we started making enemies of everybody. And you could get that from a friendly neighbor like Canada. But now we're not only putting a tariff on that stuff, we're causing Canada to refocus and try to figure out ways to send their stuff to other countries besides us. European Union. China. Vietnam. Indonesia. Indonesia makes a lot of the nickel, if you're going to go a nickel mine. So if you don't have this and you're a steel plant and you don't have nickel and chrome to make a stainless steel, you can't make stainless steel. There's nothing you can do about it if you don't have access to it. There's three ways to have access to it. We can dig it out of the ground in our country if we have a decent deposit. We can get it from a friendly neighbor, friend shoring like Canada, Mexico, or we can get it from China. So you can get it from somebody that's not friendly, someone that is friendly, and we're running out of friends because we're being an asshole to everybody. Trump is. So if you don't get this stuff, if you don't make the steel, and if you're doing something for putting cars here, you'd have a circle just like this with a lot of key components coming from unfriendly countries, and there's more and more unfriendly countries with every day that our fearless leader stays in power. China's starting to realize how much power it gets them to cut us off, and they've actually been pretty decent about the whole thing because they could cut us off from almost everything on the circle. And we act like we don't need anybody, but that's just not true, because without all these supplies, you can't make the stuff that you need to build anything. From cars to data centers to, I guess we can make everything out of plastic. We've got a lot of oil. We have a world we just live in that's made out of plastics. I guess that's Trump's plan. Anyway, this is a supply chain stack. It's a work in progress, but it'll at least give you the idea of what goes on to make something work in this world. This is the Ancient Texan wishing you a good day. Hoping you don't catch my cough. Namaste.